So let's talk about how to detox the mind. This is a subject that a lot of our higher level players have been asking me for a little while now. And it's one that honestly, even I forget just how powerful this actually is until I've done it. And I just had an experience this past weekend, actually, that I'll share with you in a moment. But I want to start this off with an analogy to just describe why detoxing the mind is so important. So, as an analogy, the physical body, as we know, feeds on food. If you were to eat all day long without stopping and food was just coming in all day long, how long do you think it would take before your body started to feel terrible and bloated and full and non-functional and would disrupt your sleep and your performance would crumble and so on and so forth? How long do you think that would take? Well, less than a day. Probably by like lunchtime, you would be completely non-functional if you were just eating and eating and eating and eating all morning. Well, this is what most of us do with our mind. In the same way as the physical body feeds on food, our mind feeds on thought. And most of us have input coming in all day long, whether that's we're like listening to music all day long, or we're listening to podcasts and watching TV shows and scrolling through our phone and thinking all day long. It's the same, it's the mental equivalent of eating all day long for your body. So, with that in mind, um, we need to go through a process and put little processes in place throughout our daily life to actually detox the mind and allow it, in the same way as we take breaks in between meals, to allow our mind to process all of this material. And I had an experience this past weekend that really reminded me of how powerful this is when I was in a 3-day meditation retreat. And on the second day, and again, I've had a really strong meditation practice for nearly 10 years now, and it shocked me. I was completely incapable of settling my mind. It was like ping-ponging up and down into thought over and over and over. And at a certain point, at first I was kind of overwhelmed, and I was like, why is this happening? And finally I realized, oh, this is a mental detox. This is a mental detox. And I allowed it to happen. And by the end of the second day, maybe early on the third day, it all went still. And this is a really common experience in meditation retreats. But when your mind finally begins to process all of this material, you're like, oh, wow, there's so much in there, in the queue, in the backlog. And so in the same way, I'll say, like, it reminded me of the fact that most of us have no idea how good the mind can actually feel once we've processed all of that. For most players, that first experience of true stillness that we get to in meditation at like midway or towards the end of a retreat is a complete revelation. It's like, whoa. That is powerful. And most players never contact that. Most people never contact that because we are just putting in these inputs all day long and not allowing our mind to process them. So a few things that you can do to aid in mental detox. The first one, we have this rule in the Deep Game program: for the first and final hour of every day, no social media, and ideally no inputs. This is when you do things like meditation practice. You might train. We do things that actually we practice our craft, but we're not putting things into our mind. If we put anything into our mind, it's highly selective. Like really high quality books would be the only thing that you do during the first and final hour. And the reason for that is because our mind is simply more open at that time. So when we are coming out of the dream state and going into the dream state, our mind it's sort of like this kind of channel opens up between the conscious and unconscious mind. And you actually feel this happening as you're falling asleep if you pay attention to it. If you're putting things into your mind, they sink in much deeper at those times. So if you're rolling out of bed, grabbing your phone and scrolling through Instagram, and like it's sort of like pouring a bunch of junk food into your body. It's the mental equivalent of that. So first and final hour of every single day. This is a rule. If you are a part of the Deep Game program or you're planning to join, this is a rule in the program. First and final hour, no social media at all. This will go a really long way for you. The next thing that we do throughout every day is we find white space. And white space is basically time that you're not putting anything into your mind. This could be, transition time between classes rather than like scrolling through your phone or listening to a podcast and like cramming even more in your mind just when you were just thinking about a subject matter and then you're about to go into another class where you're thinking about another, rather than putting more in there, just have white space. And at first, this is kind of boring, honestly. You kind of have to break this pattern of reaching for mental stimulation. But once you kind of break that pattern and that habit, you find that this white space in the in-between time during your day, maybe it's when you're washing the dishes or putting your clothes away or doing things of this nature, walking to school or something like that, rather than filling your mind with more information, allow it to settle and be still. And this will provide you the time, just like between meals, where your mind can process and become still once again. there's there's a a meditation technique that a teacher taught me many years ago that he referred to as do nothing. Do nothing. Literally sit down and do nothing. Don't make any attempt to control your mind. Don't make any attempt to focus on anything. Don't make any attempt to do anything at all. Just do nothing. Excuse me. And what inevitably happens during this period of time that you're sitting is that, and usually you have to do this for quite a long time, like at least an hour. But as you're sitting there, your mind will wander all over the place and jump from topic to topic. It's sort of like an email inbox that's completely full, and your mind just starts processing those emails one by one, these little thoughts and things that it's been processing. And finally, towards the end of that hour, 90 minutes, or however long you said, or maybe it's a retreat and it's on day 2 or 3, finally you get to inbox 0 and everything goes quiet. And again, this is what we're trying to get to when we're implementing white space into our days and finding these stretches of time where we're not pouring new input into our mind. It's allowing the mind to finally process. This is so, so, so powerful. Another exercise that you can do, and something's coming to mind right now, so I'm just going to mention this. One area, and might sound a little funny, but you know that most people do this. Most people, when they go into the bathroom, they take their phone and they start scrolling habitually. And for me personally, many years ago, I blocked Instagram and Facebook on my phone, and I actually have YouTube blocked on my phone as well most of the time. And even I deleted the email app, and so there's not a lot I can do on my phone. And just recently, I found I was in the bathroom, and I picked up my phone and I was scrolling my podcast feed. And it was so strange. I was like, what am I doing? There's nothing here. There's nothing new here for me why am I motivated to do this? And our phones have been meticulously engineered by people who do this professionally. The more you use your phone, the more profitable these companies are, these technology companies. And so they are actually designing it to be as habitually addictive as it can possibly be. So during these times, like when you're going to the bathroom, for example, and I'm sorry if this is too much, but this is what people do. Don't use your phone. Break that habitual pattern, okay? Implement white space. And I'll go into that exercise now that I was referring to. So one exercise that can be really, really helpful, and we actually do this in Deep Game as well, is what we call the brain dump. So this is called something else. I believe it's called morning pages as well. You may have heard of this in the past. It's actually something that writers often use. When writers first sit down to write first thing in the morning, they will actually just write freestyle. They'll write stream of consciousness, whatever comes into their mind goes onto the page. And inevitably, I actually did this for a little while. I practiced this, and I found that after a certain amount of time, it was different every day, but say 2 pages, 3 pages, suddenly there's it's kind of like you got all the gunk out, and now the writing starts to become higher and higher quality. The thoughts are more clear. Your mind is more present and more still. And so I actually taught this in Deep Game. We call it the brain dump, where you just sit down. I like to do it on a laptop because I can type faster than I can write by hand, but you could do it writing by hand as well. And just write stream of consciousness, whatever comes into your mind, not filtering it. You're not going to share this with anybody or show it to anybody. You are just unfiltered, pouring your mind onto the page. And do this for at least 15 minutes, even like 20, 30 minutes if you need to, until you find that your mind settles. If you do this near the at some point early in the day, ideally you do this first thing upon waking up, and then you could go straight into meditation after. This is a really good practice that you could do if you're doing mental detox. But let's say first thing in the morning you wake up and do this, you will find at a certain point that your mind just becomes kind of still. It's processed all of these thoughts. And do this for at least 7 days. This is a practice you can do as much as you like, but at least 7 days if you're doing, say, a mental detox protocol, that would be a really, really helpful thing to do as well. So finally, I'll give you a couple like higher level techniques. The first one, of course, is meditation. And we talk about meditation a little bit in the Deep Game masterclass at deepgame.com. So make sure that you've taken that. It's in the law number 1 section. We even have a talk on, I think it's called Complete Guide to Meditation for Basketball or something along those lines. And so meditation is kind of the fundamental exercise that will inherently, as a function of meditation, it will detox your mind and process what's in there and bring your mind to stillness. And I won't go into how to do that here because we've discussed it elsewhere, but make sure that you reference those. There's a whole bunch of different types of meditation. I even just referred to that do nothing meditation. That's a practice you could try, but the practice of meditation is fundamental here and fundamental to everything in the Deep Game. And then the last technique, I'm going to bring this all together in a moment, but the last technique I'll offer you is some form of social media detox. And this would include Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, even podcasts. I would recommend pretty much anything except for, well, books aren't social media, but this is the only type of input that you'd allow at this time for a period of anywhere from 4 to 14 days, even doing a social media detox where you actually like take all the apps off your phone, block them if you need to. I've been using this little app called freedom.to. It's pretty simple. I think it's like a couple bucks a month or something. I've been using it for several years. That's what I use to block these apps on my phone. Because otherwise it's just so easy to just like log on habitually, and you don't want to be tempting yourself. So in this case, go through a period of time. I would recommend at least 4 days, if not 7 days or even 14 days if you want to like really be thorough about it. But do a social media detox where you're not taking in any of that information from social media for a period of time. So just to recap on this, to go back to that analogy, our mind feeds on thought in the same way that our body feeds on food. And if you are pouring new things in there all the time, just like your body wouldn't feel good if you just ate all day long, your mind is not going to function well if you're pouring new information into it all day. For this reason, we have to find ways to detox the mind. And ways that we do this would be no social media first and final hour of the day, including YouTube. Finding white space throughout our day where we're not actually taking in any new stimulation, any new inputs, and doing this consciously throughout the day, breaking the habitual pattern of reaching for our phone and so on and so forth. The brain dump exercise where you write stream of consciousness style and just allow your mind to process all of that material. And then finally, we have meditation, of course, and the social media. I think I called it social media detox. It's really a social media fast where you don't take in any new social media for a period of time, say a week or 2 weeks. So bringing this all together, we have this mental detox protocol. You will be shocked at how good your mind feels when you do this. It's more profound than you think, I promise you. So if you want to put this information together, take what's useful to you in your situation from this, what you're able to do in your current situation, but take as much of it as you can. And I would really recommend taking the next week or 2 weeks and really dedicating yourself to detoxing your mind. Um, Again, I said this already, but I'll just say it again. You will feel so good. And you have no idea how good your mind can really feel, how clear it can feel, and in turn, how well it will function on the basketball court as a result, and how well it will function in your day to day life. Okay, so I hope that helped you out. Try it out. Let me know how you do, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hey, it's Taylor. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, the best thing to do right now while it's fresh in your mind is to head over to deepgame.com and join us in our free masterclass. Now, this is where you'll learn all 8 laws of the deep game and all of the fundamentals that you need to know about the part of basketball that's played with the mind. We've had players call this the best hour of basketball learning of their lives, and it's completely free right now. So head over to deepgame.com to join us, and I will see you there.